All right, guys, the time has come. Welcome, everybody. I hope you guys are having a good day. Hang on just a moment. My very sweet boyfriend, he is teaching a backgammon lesson at the same time I'm teaching this lesson, so we're trying to not overlap each other, that's all. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day today. I am trying to get this set up for you guys. Hopefully you guys are in the group and can see what's going on. If not, that's okay. Just trying to get set up so I can best help you guys. All right, here we go. So today we are talking about how to paint this. I am pretty stoked about it. It's super easy. It's not hard to do. It's really good. So you've got these blue mountains here. And what we're doing is just adding things on layer by layer. So we've got a very light background that we're going to put on first. We're going to have this slightly darker second layer, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. So we're going to go through wet on wet washes, wet on dry, and we're going to need a lot of patience because this takes some drying to get done. As a matter of fact, that reminds me, if you don't have a hairdryer, it's a good idea to have one if you want to use one. I'm actually going to get mine really quick because I forgot. All right, now we're in business. Hairdryer, ready to go, and plugged in. So if I sit on it and make a loud sound with it, my apologies. Anyways, all right. Hi, Ortal. All right, so what we're gonna need today is you're gonna need a large to medium-sized brush, especially for those big areas in here. So I'm gonna be able to cover a big square of area pretty fast. You're also going to want, so this is what I'll be using probably to fill in the area. It's just a nice flat brush that I have control over. You'll also want to have a smaller round brush. So I don't know if you watched earlier. Hey Lisa, how's it going? Round brushes have that pointy tip at the end. I'll be using this one or this little guy. Whatever you have on hand is totally fine. We can totally make it work. And even if you only have a flat brush, remember you can turn it and have a straight edge here to get the points for these mountains. That's the only real reason that we want it for it. All right, so because this takes time to dry, we're actually going to try and do two side by side. Need to order some watercolor paper. Yes, if I could share with you, I would, but I'm a little far away, I think, Lisa. Well. All right, so I actually want to do two colors. So I'm going to do blue since this is set up as a blue mountain range. But green, yellow, orange, what do I want the other range to be? I think I want to do green for the other one just because I love green. So what I have here is a piece of cold press watercolor paper. Whatever you got is fine, even if you don't have watercolor paper. If it is thin, I would encourage you to use less water. Because if you really get really thin, cheap paper wet, it'll buckle really bad. I have it affixed here at the edges if you really want to get involved in it. There's a way to stretch paper so that it's able to handle a lot of moisture. In case you can't tell, putting this picture on the side, the paper buckles a little bit. Because you're putting so many layers of big paint on, that's what it tends to do. So I tried to stretch it to help, but whatever you do is fine. And then also, guess what? You can do this over and over again until you get it right. All right. So I'm using my reference photo. Yeah, there we go. All right. So I'm actually going to have two rectangles here because I want them to go side by side, and because watercolor is a drying game. So I don't know if you watched the other day, but we're going to do a wet in wet wash. Let me show you. Okay, so we have washes, which is basically filling in colors in the back, in the background of the painting. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna wet the paper first with clear water, and then start putting the color that we want on. Because the more water is in it, the lighter it shows up. We want the background, remember, to show up very, very light. We want the background to be the lightest color that we've got in here. So the more water we've got in here, great. So if you want, you can take a minute to plot out how big you want it to be. Something that I tend to do, or at least did when I was in the United States and was in the metric system. I would measure things 8.5 by 10, since that was a standard size and I wouldn't have to screw around with framing it in a weird way later. This, I really don't care. I'm just trying to give myself dimensions to split it up in half. All right, so I have a 12-inch long sheet of paper. I'm just gonna, so I've got about a halfway point. I'm gonna put a 1/2 inch on either side of that, 1/2 inch from the edges. And give myself a border. So again, I'm doing this with you, even though it's boring to watch, because I want you to have time to do it as well. And just so you can see how I do it. Once again, in case you weren't, or you didn't get a chance to watch the technique video, I have this pencil. I'm trying to see if you can focus on it. Yes, there it is, 6H. This means it's a very hard pencil, and a very hard pencil means it's very light. The very dark graphite pencils are super soft, so they crumble and make really dark lines. This is really hard, it's a really soft line. So, I'm just going to draw some borders for myself. That way I can get started. If you want, you can always do 2 reference points. I tend to eyeball and cheat. Once again, you do not have to do this. This just helps me show you visually and gives me reference for what I'm doing. And as you can tell, I knew when I took the binder clips off, I was going to leave a mark. I don't care. I do not care that I left a mark. It really is not a big deal. Because, as you can see, it's outside the border of what I'll be painting. You're always going to paint areas past where the framing is going to be. You don't have to worry about it. All right, so when you're doing a flat wash, it's best if you can try and prop it up. They say about, like 30 degrees. So once again, this is good math. So, what do I want to prop it up on, guys? All right. So, we are doing a, I'll prop it up on my lid here. Because remember, we need 2 cups of water. Remember, I have this fancy one. I've got the dirty cup right here, where I'm just going to rinse out between colors, and then the clean one so that I can activate the watercolors without mixing them and getting the colors muddy. But for you, this will be cup 1, cup 2. All right. So once again, that might not work. We'll find out. Oh dear, guys. See, we're all in this together. I can't do that on the paint tray. I'm gonna have to move this. All right, that might be better. Here we go. All right, once again, we are all in this together. I don't have any crazy equipment that you don't have. I just have a lot more art supplies from years of doing this. Okay, now, I want you to see something in the paint tray. Now, do you see how it's really dark down here? These paint trays are slanted. Now, that's something important to remember because water's heavy. It rolls downhill. It rolls at a slant. So, something to remember, the reason why we have this slanted is that so that the paint, as we're putting it on, rolls downhill. So, I'm going to take this. I'm going to take my flat brush. You may have a bigger brush. You may have a round brush. It really doesn't matter. And we're actually going to practice. And all we really want to do is make sure that the whole paper where we want to paint is wet. You can use clear water, or something I'm going to do just so maybe you can see it, and because I always do that for my reference anyways, I'm going to put, since I'm putting a little bit of blue, since blue is the background I want, I am going to be putting a tiny bit of blue in the tray. And that looks like you can see it from over there. Great. Okay, so just so I know what I'm working with. Because, of course, when you put the clear water on there, you can't see it. So the idea here is, ideally, to just cover this with clean water, and that's called a wet in wet wash. This is definitely not 30 degrees, guys, but it's a bit of a tilt. Hopefully it helps. Anyways, so I used to work at Wine and Canvas down in Columbus, and these periods when everyone was just putting their colors in always took time, and I always tried to make small talk. And I wish you guys could talk back with me, but that's okay. Your hands are full. You guys are trying to execute this. So if you can comment, of course, I'd love to hear from you. And I have my laptop set up so that I can see you this time. Yeah, just trying to make sure this is all wet. And you may need to revisit the top section to make sure it is. And that's okay. Remember, clean water, unless you want a little bit of pigment for reference. Don't worry about overlapping the edges if you have them, because when you frame it, the matting, you'll either trim it or you can mat it in a way that it won't matter. All right, almost there, guys, on this one. All right. Now, something that's important to do here is make sure it's all wet. And the best way to do that right now is to see if it's shiny. Kids are doing a puzzle, but watching you paint, listening to you talk is soothing, so I have you on while I work. No problem, glad you're here. So if you look at this, I guess that really is a Bob Ross thing, right? That's good. You can see how shiny it is. That's how we know it's still wet, and that's good. And in case you can't, I don't know if yours is doing this, but my paper's starting to buckle a little bit. But now that it's wet on wet, we want to start adding the blue. I'm using my warm blue, which is a cobalt blue, and then you just start putting it in. You kind of have to treat it like a wet and dry, and just go from side to side. Make sure it's wet. Overlap the first layer. That way you don't have any issues with lines being left behind, because you want this part to be very light but also very uniform. Just drag across. A little bit at a time. There we go. And you just keep going back and forth. And the good thing is, while it's wet, you can keep working with it. So you can see me kind of going back and blending it in. You only want to do it right away. If you do it after it has dried a little bit, you'll get in trouble. It does things that you may not want, especially if you're looking just for a uniform color in the background, which is what we want here. And if you're looking at something, try in the drawers over there. here's the important thing. Once you have it all filled in, leave it alone. Don't screw with it, because that's called overworking. So leave it alone, let it dry. And once again, the fun about watercolors is the imperfections. So for example, if you do go back and screw around with it, you may have something like this happen. This right here, this is called a back run. Sometimes I do this intentionally, but this is because I felt like this corner needed touching up, and I went back with too much white paint. And then this was way more wet than this part, and then it leaves this like kind of sunburst line. You can see it here too. So, that's the blue. I'm gonna move to a second one if you want to as well. Like I said, I'm gonna do green, and I am obsessed with this phthalo green that I have. Right here. It's like my favorite paint I've ever had. Once again, we're going to do a wet and wet background, so this is good practice. It's reinforcing. Take clean water or water with a little bit of pigment. I'm going to do clean water this time just so you can see how hard it is to tell where you got it wet. But in the same way you put the color on, it's easy to just go back and forth with the clean water too. Okay. Once again, if you have thin paper, you don't have watercolor paper, that's okay. But if you put a ton of water on here, it'll be more likely to crinkle and buckle. Actually, mine's kind of doing that too, but that's okay. All right. All right, now we got that all covered with nice clean water for our wet and wet wash. We're looking at it. Might use a little more water there. But I think everything is all nice and shiny, so I'm going to start adding just a little bit of that yummy green I like. One of the things I like about watercolors is that a little bit goes a long, long way. So, once again, you just start filling in from left to right, right to left, overlapping the bottom edge of the layer above. Now, once again, you can work it a little bit right now, but only if you can right now, since we're going for the effect of a very flat background, very flat wash. You don't want to mess with it too much. Wherever you guys are watching from, it is actually raining while I'm painting this, and it's very, very soothing. So I guess this is a perfect kind of day for this kind of activity. And I'm glad I get to share it with you. Another reason why I'm doing two of these side by side is so you can see the differences. It's just like, of course you're not going to have something that looks just like mine, just like I won't have something that looks just like yours, and that's okay. It really is. Okay, a little bit more. All right. Very, very light. Okay, excellent. Looks like I'm a little bit high on the camera. Sorry about that, guys. All right, so we now have two sides. This is where watercolor is a little bit of a pain in the ass because, as you can see, the left side is still really shiny. So, a lot of watercolor is patience because here's what we're trying to do. We are trying to do wet on dry. We're trying to do crisp lines over top of each other. And this paint has to be fully dry before we can get that effect, or it'll come together wet and wet. And we won't get these sharp shapes that we're looking for. Like those peaks and those lines. Underneath has to be really dry before we can do that. So I'm gonna cheat a little bit if you don't mind. This is gonna be loud. I'm going to use a hairdryer. If you have one and want to use one as well, great, go for it. I'm gonna start on a cool, low setting. It may move the paint, just so you're aware of that, so try and be gentle, try and start further away. I'm trying, yeah, you'll see me try. All right, here we go. If you have one, great. If not, threatening to blow away. All right, our blue is dry. Now guys, you keep painting at your own pace. You can always go back and watch this later. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Actually gonna do this a little bit. Once again, we got it propped up a little bit. And this is gonna matter now because, so the first wash we did was wet and wet, right? So, now this one, what we're gonna do, it's gonna be wet on dry. A little bit more to that corner. Yeah, I don't know if you can see it, but I definitely smudged it with my finger. But once again, you kind of have to roll with it. It looks like it's on the outside of the border, so I don't care. But, say la vie. Okay, what do we got? Bring this down so you can see it. Great. All right, so this really is an exercise in getting shades right. So what we're going to do is put something slightly darker, and all that means is we're going to put a little more blue into our strokes, and that's like a paint to water ratio. Now, it didn't take much blue to get this light of a color, and it doesn't take much more to get this second color right here. It really doesn't. So we're going to be working wet and dry. If you had the flat brush like I did, this time I want you to at least start at the top with a pointed round brush. You want the pointed tip, that way we can get those pointed details. So, all right, looks like I need to mix that color. As you can see, I have like places where my principal colors are, and then I have separate places where I mix shades. Now I have some left over from projects that I've been working on to teach you in the near future. I do have a spot over here that you can't see. I'll move it over. When you're mixing, it's good to use a bigger brush. So over here I'm dipping into the Cobalt blue, which is the color I want to use pretty much for the whole thing, but I will also show you places where I added a little bit of green and a little bit of red. just to make things a little more interesting, a little more different. All right. So I want this to be nice and thin. So thin meaning a lot of water versus paint. That's what I mean when I say that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with that tiny brush to get this top line, and then we're going to do the same back and forth wash motion going down. And I may switch to this bigger brush at that point. But we'll see. Just because it will give me. In the beginning, I need the control to get those sharp lines. But later, once I get that first sharp line going, I'm sure you guys can hear everything he's saying. It's okay. I think he's teaching a guy in England right now, maybe. I'm not sure. All right. So hopefully you can see in the painting this mountain line. You do not have to hold to it, but you can kind of see where I started. In case you can't see, this is about the halfway line in the painting. So I want a lot of sky to like offset this. So to go along with that, let's load up our round brush with the pointy tip and make sure it stays very wet. And now here's the thing. Once you start putting it to the paper, you gotta move fast. You gotta work while it's wet if you wanna keep it smooth. So, all right, so I'm eyeballing this. I don't know about you guys. This is where I'm starting. All right, let's get going. So here's the thing. As I move around, if I feel like right now I need more water in there, I can come back and get a little more. Preferably you'd want to do this not from a super muddy water. So let's keep moving. And once again, do you see how I keep kind of like coming back over this line? This is the critical line you want to keep wet. So as I'm drawing this like jagged mountain line right here, going up, okay? I'm trying to make sure that the bottom line, wherever it is, stays wet. And once again, unless you change it right away, don't go back and rework stuff. It'll make the texture look funky. All right, so in this one, it's about right here. All right, making sure I'm keeping this bottom line wet. Great. Do I want that to be more pointy? I don't know. Once again, this is just fun. If you want, you can always use a reference picture of real mountains and get like a real mountain line that you would like. Sometimes I do that for abstract stuff. It makes me feel better. Or you can tear a piece of paper like in a jagged way and kind of imitate those tears. All right. Okay, once again, keeping that bottom line wet. This is a wet on dry wash. You can see how I can keep going back and forth. All right, and we're just gonna keep that going all the way down. Now here's the thing, because what we're doing right now is we're glazing. By laying all of these layers on top of each other, right here, you will need to paint this all the way down, even though you can see over here, not a whole lot is showing, but because all the colors build on each other, you need to have the same base all the way down. Oops, I gotta keep moving. I gotta listen to my own advice and keep moving. All right, right to left. Remember how we had this at a slant? Something you can see, of course. A little more of that. Especially if I put more water in here. You see how it's like darker at the bottom? Because the paint is rolling down. And that's exactly what we want. That's what will give us a smooth finish. So once again, don't feel bad if your paper is buckling. Mine is, even though it's actual watercolor paper. Just, it's something you're gonna have to embrace if you want to keep working with watercolor. You have to accept that it has a mind of its own and you can't fully control it. You just do the best you can and make the most of when it does funky things. So for example, I know that because this has a valley right here developing, I don't know, you probably can't see it on the camera, because there's like a valley developing right there, that's gonna collect more paint and, you know, it's all gonna roll downhill to that spot, of course. So as we keep adding layers and it keeps buckling more, that's what's gonna happen. All right, now I'm gonna stop screwing with it. Something you can probably already see is that this spot is the darkest right now. I'm not gonna worry about that because the problem is the paper is buckling and that's where the water is starting to pool a little bit. But I also know if I screw around with it too much, it's not gonna look very smooth. So once again, you kind of have to embrace it. And at any rate, this is gonna be covered up later anyways. All right, so we're gonna do the same thing now with the green. So you're either waiting for your blue to dry, or you can paint along with me on the second one. Do one more water. And you can see how thin that is. It really doesn't take much. You're going to hear me say that over and over and over again. So maybe a little bit more. The trick is just making sure you have enough of this, they call it a puddle, to finish the whole piece. So, there we go. All right. Let's put this one back. And let's do this in green. Okay? All right, down to the puddle. Find my halfway point. Oh, I wanted to check. Okay, yeah, that's dry. That's pretty good. I'm actually gonna, sometimes if you like clip your paper down, I have mine on a cutting board. It's probably hard to see, but it's a nice stiff, let's see if I make this work. A nice stiff board, I'm not worried about getting wet. But sometimes if you clip the edges down or tape them down, it minimizes the warping. Anyways, all right, green. Let's get some green in there, guys. Once again, once you put since you're covering a big area and you're trying to do it in a smooth way, once you put the brush on the page, you're gonna wanna move fast. All right, here we go. So about halfway, great. And then start making a jagged mountain. Once again, trying to keep that bottom line wet. That way there's no lines that show up afterwards. If you want a nice crisp, you want a nice smooth area, that's really important. Something like that. And again, you can see how this is slightly different than the other one. I'm not looking for you to completely recreate what I did, or to completely recreate what you did on the other side. For all I care, you can do completely different shapes. This is your piece. I'm just showing you how to make this particular piece. Some of my favorite students in the wine and canvas classes, let's make sure this keeps going down. They would go rogue and do things that I was not teaching. But it was great because then there was more of a variety at the end of the night, which was really great. So these aren't rules you need to follow. It's just this is how to paint this thing, and I want you to learn and go off of it and make something your own. All right. Okay, I'm gonna need more green, it looks like. Okay. All right, once again. Now you're just doing a wet on dry wash. So just start, and you can see, maybe you can see how the green is rolling down. Again, overlap that last line. In this case, I'm going to start using that bigger brush. Just because it's more uniform, it has that flat edge. Yeah, you can probably see it rolling a little bit right now. That's what I want. There we go. All right. keep going back and forth, covering that last line until it's all the way covered. Okay, I'm kind of fussing with it because it's still very wet. I don't want to fuss with it too much. All right. If you want to cheat again with me, great. I'm going to use the hairdryer. I'm going to put it on the lowest warm setting. I'm going to start with the blue. I'm trying to not move the paint very much, but it looks fairly dry and stable. So this time I have it clipped to the board, which is helping me. So I'm going to hold on and start drying. In case you missed that, could you watch the blue move? I'm going to chase it back down low or it'll get washed out or painted over. And again, if I wasn't cheating and using the hairdryer, it wouldn't be happening. That's fine. Here we go. Awesome. If you cheated like me, great. If not, you just listen to me. Use my hairdryer. It's fine. All right. Now, we're going for layer 2. Remember, I told you this will take a while. So we're just doing the same thing over and over again, just adding a little bit more pigment. For these first 3 layers, now for these first 2, I just kept a cobalt blue. But when I got down here to the 3rd layer, I added a little bit of the green just to make the color a little bit different. And then when I got down to this 5th layer, I added a little bit of red to make it more purplish. And then for the bottom one, I actually put the layer on twice in order to make it strong enough to cover up and stand out. Anyways, we'll keep going. I'm going to throw my paints in over here. And the blue here. So you guys didn't know, you're going to get some bonus backgammon tips today. In case you didn't know, my boyfriend is a very, very, very good backgammon player and teaches lessons. So if you're watching this and feel like you'd like to learn some backgammon too, let me know. I can always connect you guys. All right, let's do layer number 2. Now once again, this is another wet on dry layer. This is completely dry, and I'm sure that if you have yours drying, you can feel it, you can see that it's uneven. Once again, it's going to do funny things to how your paint moves, so just be prepared for that. It's not going to be flat. The more you put on there, the more the paper will struggle with it. Let's see, okay, now we're just doing a stronger Cobalt. What kind of color paint are you using, guys? Are you sticking with blue? Did you choose a different color? I'd be curious to hear. All right. So we still want to have a pretty thin color because even if we stayed pretty much in the same range as this, it's building up. It's like stained glass, and if you layer stained glass, it gets stronger. Hey Megan, how's it going? Try and see something real quick, guys. So everyone can pop in and enjoy. It's interesting trying to manage this. Alright, here we go. Alright, layer number 2. I think you can still kind of see the layers here. Something I like about this one is that the second one pops up over the other. Because it's not true to life to just have it be all in descending order. It's fun to have them overlap a little bit. So, once again, just a little bit of space between the top and the start. And remember, once you jump in, you gotta get it started if you want that full flat wash. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, go. All right. Something like that. Once again, keep that bottom line moving. Actually gonna try, I have a smaller brush here, but the trick for that is because it's smaller, it doesn't move as much paint, but I'd really like there to be better points, which is hard to do with bigger brushes. So you kind of have to multitask with multiple brushes as you're trying to get through all of this. So once again, whatever you have is fine. I'm just showing you what's going on in my brain. All right, making sure that bottom line stays wet, please stay wet. Okay, and I want the peak to come up here. Keep that bottom line wet. I'll take a smaller brush to get better points. A little more craggy. Okay, keep that bottom line wet. Maybe another peak right here. Oh, actually turned out pretty sharp, great. All right, making sure the bottom line stays wet, overlapping it with a stroke. And now that we've got the line all filled in, I'm gonna move to that bigger flat brush and start with the side to side. This right here is more methodical, it's easier. Okay, need more pigment. Okay, a little bit of green in that one, whoops. But it's gonna be covered up and that's the fun of it, right? There we go. Alright. There we go. Alright, second layer. Now, if you have a second half, go ahead and join me on that one. If not, feel free to walk away for a bit, let this dry, and I will repeat over here. Once again, because I want points to be a certain way, I've got a bigger brush, a smaller brush. Let's get this going. I've been standing this whole time. I'm gonna sit now, guys. Keeping that bottom layer wet. What do we got? giggling because you guys are getting free backgammon lessons today, whether you wanted to or not. Oh no, it's okay. I'm really grateful that we both have ways to help people and give them something, you know, to look forward to and do right now. We really enjoy getting to teach people, to help people, so I'm glad that we have a way that we can still do it online.
So 21.5% plus 1. Does Black win here about 22.5%? I think he does. Race is dead even. Dead even. It's very plausible that he wins here more than
Okay. I still like it popping up over here, so we're going to do that again. Once again, you can use real life pictures of mountain ranges for inspiration as to how you want these shapes to be. Keep them as true to life and organic as possible, which is always nice. Or you can just wing it, which is kind of what I did. Okay, here we go. Almost there. A little more water. A little more water. I really like how this green's turning out. Not realistic, but green is one of my favorite colors, so this is fun. It's also fun to do something different because, of course, I painted this already. That way I could teach it to you guys. All right, everything's all filled in. I need to stop screwing with it. All right, so that is the third layer done. Sweet. In case you're wondering, this is what my water bucket looks like. So this is what your first cup probably is. This is what your clean cup usually is. I did use this side a little bit, and actually isn't too bad. It's okay that it stays this gummy because I blot it off on a paper towel and then move it to the white. I don't care. I just want this to get rid of crap. All right, how are we doing here? I don't think I have any big puddles. But if I do, all right, here we go. Hairdryer time. That's definitely a puddle. All right. But you can also see it's just like if you wanted to experiment and screw around, you could use this stuff. Some people use straws and blow in them. I see that a lot with alcohol ink, not so much watercolor. Moving on to the next layer. Now, these first three layers, 1, 2, 3, I've just kept different values, different strengths of the same color. But as I've moved down into the fourth and the fifth layer here, they look different because I added different colors. So for the blue, I added a little bit of green to give it a different shade, as well as adding more pigment to the water. And then for this bottom layer, I added red, which is what I'll do again. Anyways, So let's start with the blue. All right, so it needs to be stronger, so I need to put a good amount of the blue over here. And then I'm just gonna start slowly adding a little bit of green until I get about the color I want. More. Once again, you kind of have to do your own judgment on this. Yeah, let's do that. That looks good to me. Once again, this is your piece. You can do what you want. But let's start there. All right. Oh, it's good to sit. Whew. All right, so we want a pretty strong pigment, which means we want a pretty good amount of paint to water ratio, so heavier on the paint side. And once again, once you start, you are committed. Make sure that you get it all the way through the end. So, something else, you'll see how this paint looks this color. There are two things to know about the watercolors we're putting on here right now. Something you can kind of see from the top of this mountain. Come here. You see how it's hard to tell, but it's slightly lighter here where it's poking above the bottom layer, showing you how the glaze works. It's kind of hard to tell unless you're right up on it, but I kind of like the effect. It's interesting. Also, whatever you put in the paper when it's wet, it will dry 30% lighter. That's opposite in acrylic. In acrylic, gets darker. Watercolor gets lighter as it dries. And the color you put it on top of matters. So the color this would be if I put it on a scrap piece of paper. Let's go ahead and do that right now. And we'll compare in a minute. This is the color it would be all by itself. But since we're not putting this on white paper, we're putting it on an already painted blue page, this will be a different color. So I'm going to set this aside for now and come back to it later. Alright. A little bit of a tilt. Alright, what do we got? Alright. Do I have all the brushes? I have an amazing ability to lose the things I put down immediately. Alright, nice thick pigment, green with the blue. Here we go. Once again, just a little bit further down. And then just start going. Once again, once you get started, keep it going. Don't stop. Okay, I want some sharper points here, so I'm going to get the little brush with the littler point to give that effect. Keep this bottom line wet. Dip in the right color. Get some sharper points in there. Okay, keep that bottom line wet. I kind of like the idea of seeing it go a little out like this. Here we go. Yeah, nice. Alright. Hard part's done. Now just start doing the wet on dry wash, side to side. Make sure that you have a nice strong color. Here we go. And all right. Keep it going. All right. Got our fourth layer now. I also want to show you again the difference. Oh, it's got a nice little thing. It will change more as it dries, but you can see how this turned out much bluer than it did on the white paper, because the blue is coming through like almost like light. So keep that in mind as you're layering your watercolors. What you put underneath will affect what you put on top. It doesn't cover over like acrylic. It will be affected by what it's on top of, what it's mixed with, obviously, stuff like that. So, all right, now something I did not do yet was figure out what I wanted to mix this third layer with on the green. I could go the route of blue. Maybe I can do, you know what, I think I'm gonna mix. So this green I have been using is Pthalo green. It's my favorite green. I love it, love it, love it. It's very strong, it tends to overpower stuff. It's just really yummy. I usually talk about my paint like it's food. Anyways, but I think I'm gonna go, instead of the direction of blue for this layer, let's see if I can add some of that warm green, that green gold. See what that does. So we'll get a nice strong, heavily pigmented wash.
Do you agree with me on Grace's position? So if you have Grace's position, it's a double. It's not too early for a double.
Okay, nice. Now let's see how this plays on there. It should be a nice darker pigment. Should be a nice, stronger, darker pigment than what's on there now. And it should look different than if it were just painted on a blank sheet. We'll do that again just for an example. Yeah. So that would be if it were just on a blank sheet. And you'll see that it won't really turn out that way by the end. All right, 1, 2, 3, go. Silver. Once again, you can see that not everything starts and stops in the same place. There's variations in mine and yours. There's no right way to do it. See guys, I almost lost that. I almost lost that paintbrush I was looking for. Okay. Okay. Oh, that's nice. It definitely is warmer. Okay. Let's keep the bottom line wet like always. Use a smaller brush for a tinier point. Gotta make sure that bottom line stays wet. These are like nice little Irish mountains maybe. With the green, right? No? I don't know. Okay. Just keep on rolling. All right, come on. There we go. Okay. Now we're back into the straight up. Oops. It's my charger cable. Straight up. Wet on dry wash, overlapping that bottom line every time to keep it smooth. I really like how that shape turned out. I like it with the green gold. What's that? Oops. Almost didn't go over the edge. Okay. Oh, come on, you can do it. Make it to the end. Go, get in there. There we go. All right. Awesome. And now we have the fourth layer on the green. Makes me happy. Now I'm gonna need a paper towel, so let me go get a roll. All right, so I have these areas for these bits of color, but I need to do more to that. So I'm going to bump the camera nicely and rinse these out a little bit. My paint trays are always a hot mess. All right, so this is my blue side, this is my green side. Now this time with the blue, I'll bet if I mix it, that might actually dry by itself. Anyways, for the blue side, I'm actually going to do this next layer. As I showed you in here, this layer is kind of greenish. This one I added red to. So, that's what I'll do again. So, back over here to add a nice, strong cobalt pigment. And then I'm pretty sure I used Alizarin crimson last time. I was gonna call it Aladdin. How about you guys? Just add a little bit as needed. A little bit here. Yeah, that's nice. Still very cobalty, but it's got a nice purplish tinge. That's nice. Okay. And then over here in the green, I think I'll basically do this color right here. So I'm gonna mix the green, that Pthalo green.
You see, we are 92, he's 108. If you have a 160,
Mix that Pthalo green. See if I can coax this pigment out. When you do these big spaces like this, it tends to eat up your paints. When I like to work in small details, so my paints last forever. It's fine. Everyone works differently. Yeah, that's really nice. Oh, I forgot to compare it to you. So once again, we put that yellow green over here, over the other greens. You can see maybe a little bit that it's probably a little more greenish on there, not as yellow. You can see a lot more of the yellow here. You can't see it as much in the painting because it's resting on more greens. Is that dark enough? Is that gonna be enough? A little bit more. All right, so got those mixed. These are mostly dry, but I'm gonna zap them again. So bear with me. my, I've gone way past 45 minutes, haven't I, guys? Sorry about that. For those who are still here, great, glad to have you. Trying to make this as fast as possible, but once again, watercolor is not a fast medium because you're always dealing with it drying. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4 on to the 5th layer, and then only one more after that, which we will double up on, just so you know in advance. All right, here we go. This one I liked, in case you can't see on camera. This one I like how I had the peak. This one also overlaps. So we have the overlap in the 2nd row. This one has an overlap here on this 5th layer. So I'm gonna have this overlap somewhere in here, just so it keeps it interesting. All right, this is blue. And once again, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Here we go. This is more of a purplish color. I don't want this to overlap. I think I'm going to go against the norm, maybe go up over here. Yeah, we're going to go right here and work side to side. That's what I want to do. Once again, it's what I mean is there's no right way to do this necessarily, guys. And just keep the edges wet. I'm going to put the smaller brush into use. About that. We will do a lesson about it, just refresh your memory, probably next time. And now? So maybe next time you guys are here, you'll be able to hear the lesson too. I love him, he's so smart. Okay, I'm going to come along that bottom edge again. Remember, we don't want it to get dry. Fix this up a little bit, be more what I want. Yeah, that's better. Okay. Maybe a little more. Yeah, that's better. Okay, keep going. Just gotta keep moving because the paper is wet and it will turn on you if you don't keep it wet. I really wish I could talk to you guys right now. All right. We got the points in. Oh, that one's kind of weird. Maybe I'll do a little more like tiny brush. Action, there we go. That's better. All right. Back and forth, here we go. We will keep going along here. Here we go. Yeah, these kinds of pieces are sometimes a little tedious. But this will be rewarding at the end. So I'm excited. Alright, sweet. That one's done. At least for that layer. And there's just one layer left. Once again, I don't know if you can see like these dark areas. It's where the paper has continued to warp and buckle because the water shifts the paper. Oh, yes. Here we go. There we go. All right. Now, we're going to put this blue-green that we actually pretty much used here. Put it over here. Make sure it's all dry. Okay, all dry. All right. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. So we want to overlap somewhere here. What's a good place since it's a different line? I think I want to put it here. This is where I think I want to overlap. Because that's what I feel like. Okay. Now let's start moving it around. So 20 minus 5 is 15 divided by 2. I overlap it a little bit twice. just for fun.
21.5 plus 7.5, 29. Does black win more or less than 29?
All right, I want more details. Like over
But he
here.
definitely wins more than 29%. He wins here 13 more than that. Because of the reasons we just mentioned. No daylight, easy anchor, definitely. He wins here more. So from Black's point of view, it's definitely.
Keep filling in.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It doesn't dip down more. Okay. There's that.
60% damage for white and about 5% for black.
Keep rolling.
My estimation wasn't that far.
All right. Once again, wet on dry, left to right.
But, and again, if this is the thing, you need to do market losers. Problem with market losers, it's complicated.
In case you're wondering, guys, regarding backing, I've never played a game with him. I don't know how to play. Don't know how to play, even though I overhear these lessons all the time. Very often I'm in the same room painting with him. So now I'm just teaching painting while he's on his lesson. Alright. There. Alright, awesome. Guys, last layer. Last layer. You've been so patient. Thank you so much. We're going to let those sit while we mix the last ones, okay? And what I'm going to do is clean out these again. Kind of clean the slate. It's okay if a tiny bit still in there, it won't matter. So, this is actually where our black's going to come into play. This can go, not there. And we're going to want a real dark color to overwhelm the rest of it. I'm kind of sad how much of that yellow green got lost, but still a nice effect in there. Alright, I'm actually going to need more paint in my palette, guys. Once again, you may have cakes. That's not blue. I have tubes. So I've got Cobalt blue and Pthalo green. Daniel Smith is a really good company and holds up really well. I actually do paintings with salt water from the Mediterranean since I live in Israel, and these hold up really, really well. Cheaper paints don't do as well with the salt water, but these, because it's such a good paint, it does a great job. That's something else you can do if you're by the ocean or just want to mix up some salt water for the heck of it. That's another experiment that you can do. Maybe that's something I can do a class on. Alright. Very strong green. Still drying. And then a nice strong blue. And then black. Alright, let's wake this guy up. That's what I like about watercolors. It's just like if it dries out in the palette, it's not the end of the world. You just wake it back up with some water and you're good to go. I freaking love that. Now when it comes to mixing, if you have a darker color, it has a tendency to overpower the lighter color. So it is easier to mix little by little than to just dump it in all at once. So I think I went darker than that. Because it's really hard to backpedal and a pain in the ass. So yeah, now we're getting somewhere. And I know it's going to dry lighter, so I'm going to put a little bit more.
Well, that's not true. If you've got like a 1-4 or a 2-4, you can.
And do the same over here.
Yeah, but I agree. Other than that, 3-4, double 4, 5-4, you can just play the first 4.
Yes, they do need time to get dry. Like I said, I cheated with the hairdryer. I know not everyone's gonna have that. That's okay. Alright. I think I mentioned at the beginning, but this last layer down here, it is gonna be doubled up, just to make sure it's strong enough to cover everything. So, alright. I'm gonna cheat and dry everything. All right. Ortal, I know yours isn't dry yet, but that's okay. I'll just keep trucking along. All right. Back to the round brush, back over here to the black blue. And let's do our last layer, guys. Once again, we will be going over it a second time. Where is my little brush? There's our little brush. To glaze it and make it nice and strong. So, here we go. Here, why not? Continuing to keep the bottom layer wet. Put this one on.
It is complicated, I agree. I agree. The best thing you can do here is scratch because it's too complicated for our people.
Keep this going.
Well, I disagree. We are leading by 6 feet. And with the cube in hand, and we might keep the second one.
I told you guys that I don't know backgammon. I don't know if you heard it, though, just talking about pips. I have a very vague idea of what they are. I don't actually know. This actually might be dark enough they want to do a second layer, guys. That's great. That may be enough. If that's the case, that would make this faster, which we like. We'll see how it dries. All right, on to the green. Overlap over here again, and like when it pops through a little bit. Alright, keeping the bottom line wet. different line, because that's what I want to do. In the same way that you can do what you want to. Alright, now we're down to this wash. I don't know what a bar is, guys. Alright, that is the last layer. We'll see how these dry. They might be dark enough that we may not have to glaze over. But I will end that there so you don't have to hang around with me too much longer, since it has been close to an hour and a half. But there you go. If you painted this, I'd love to see what you came up with and how it turned out. I know this was a long video, but unfortunately, well, what else have you got going on, honestly, on one hand? And on the other hand, watercolor just takes a while. The classes I used to do with the wine and canvas, were 3 hours. Of course, you're in a group of people drinking wine, and not so much here, but what are you gonna do? Anyways, once again, if this bottom layer dries too light where the line, so you see here that line is nice and dark against the other one, big enough of a contrast, I would encourage you to go over it again if you feel like that would help the piece. But if you feel like it's dark enough, which I think especially this green one is, you can get away with just leaving it the way it is. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I enjoyed getting to teach you guys. Keep an eye out in the group for more events. I already put one up with rainbow triangles. I don't have that in front of me right now, but I do have 2 other things that I can show you that are in front of me. Actually 3. I am working on something for kids. Thumbprint bumblebees. So something easy and quick that still has them painting. For grown-ups or people with more patience, I've got this ombre, I don't know, moon. I did it in teal, but you can do it in a different color with shades if you want. This one actually isn't too bad because, as you can see, it has lines, so the drying isn't much of a factor. And I'm also doing like that, like that. Oh, it's in here. Sorry, guys. I'll also be doing these foggy pine trees in a lake. So all of those will be scheduled in the group if you'd like to join me and don't mind spending an hour or an hour and a half with me to get through these. Anyways, I hope that what you did turned out well. Send me pictures, post them in the group. I'd love to see them. Let me know if you're watching the replay and if you have any other ideas for what to work on next, okay? I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you later. Bye.